Story 1. Foreign ago, late 90s. When I was 19, I moved from Oregon to Florida to be with my boyfriend at the time. Side note, don't ever do that. I was thinking white sand beaches and Mickey Mouse, but instead I got swamped bugs and dirt roads. It was a huge shock to the system. We lived in a stinky little town called Hawthorne, just outside of Gainesville. Very small, one stoplight in 4 stores. Dollar General, Steve's Market, Eckerd's Pharmacy, and Sonny's Barbecue. Whoopee. Anyway, I got a job at the now defunct Eckerd's in the middle of town. It was next to the grocery store, so everyone shot there after about 3 months or so of working there. I walked in to start my shift one day when the manager pulled me into his office. Laid out on his desk were about 30 to 40 open letters, all addressed by hand to me. "Do you know this person?" my manager asked. "No." "Read one," he tells me, so I picked a cheerful yellow one. Inside were 2 handwritten letters in the magazine, cut out of a woman with long blonde hair, just like me as the echo. Manager watched on. I read the letter. I skipped around a lot out of confusion, desperately trying to find out why I'm in this room. From what I read, it was mostly someone imagining what spending time with me would be like. A lot of it was sexual in nature. There were descriptions and comments about my hair, washing it, smelling it, and something about the moonlight. A few sentences were highlighted, others were underlined. My first thought was, am I getting fired? "Do you know this David Elrod?" my manager asked. "Hair?" I said. "Yes, I think so." The tall, lanky guy with thick glasses and frizzy dark blonde hair, the regular who comes in a couple of times a week to pick up Diet Coke and medication for his mom. Late 20s, in obviously social or mentally challenged. On rare occasions, he would make small talk as I rung up his soda. Once or twice, he would linger at my register or stare at me, but I figured he was just trying to adjust his eyes, so I had poor social cues. Harmless compared to some other people I'd met in Florida, so I didn't pay him any mind. Until that day in Eckerd's office, I knew he wrote the letters because of a strange encounter 2 weeks earlier. While working, he came up behind me and caressed my hair. I had to remove it from his hands, and he apologized. Weird. No harm, I thought. I then went back to work. After telling my manager this, he informed me that the customer was going to be banned from the store and I was being sent home while they worked out the details. What details? I was confused. I walked out of the store and drove home. It was also strange. 2 hours later, I got home from my non-shift at work. There was a knock at my door. I look out the window and see what resembles a SWAT team. What is going on? I saw many tactical gear with large weapons, 2 men dressed in suits, and several uniformed cops in what seemed like slow motion. At the time I opened the door, a female officer holds up a few oddly familiar letters. "Can we come in and talk to you about these?" Realizing everyone in town has read these letters, I wanted to pass out. I don't even know the guy. We have a seat on my couch, and she begins to speak, and out of the corner of my eye, I see my boyfriend shooting me dirty looks from the bedroom. The female officer mentions getting the letters from Eckerd's and attempting to issue a trespassing notice. I wanted to speak to him directly. She says because her whole department is aware of David. The officers confronted him at his residence and attempted to evoke the trespassing notice from Eckerd's store. Apparently, he was not happy about this. He insisted for over 45 minutes how this was all a big mistake, and I wanted to talk to him. He was so combative and persistent, they decided to pursue stalking charges. "Stalking charges," she continues. "You need to be aware that David killed and partially dismembered his mother when he was 12 years old. He was released from a juvenile psychiatric facility less than 4 years ago." Diet Coke, I thought to myself. "We found disturbing materials at his home," she continued. "We believe he's been stalking you." My mind kept wondering. It's my mom's favorite drink for him, saying David was arrested the next day for stalking after he was found in the Eckerd's parking lot, but the last official word was he went back to the psychiatric hospital, at least temporarily. I didn't have the chance to read the letters in full before they were entered into some vault of evidence, nor did they explain what they found at his house, so I never had the complete picture of what was happening. My boyfriend at the time was a huge dick about the whole thing, so why moved back to war again a week later. Besides, who wants to hang around when Norman Bates is fixated on you? Story 2. So I've been dying to share this story. When I was young, around 6 to 9 years old, when I was in the basement of my house, my oldest sister's room was down there. And being the youngest, I never got the remote upstairs, so I'd watch TV in her Room in the basement. Well, my mom and my sisters were all upstairs. I don't remember what my dad was doing, but I remember he wasn't in the house. He was either doing yard work outside or he was at work. I was sitting on the bed and I paused the TV because I heard rustling sound. I sat up and just listened for a moment. In silence, heard her voice, her man's voice, whisper my name. I was frozen with fear and didn't dare to move for a couple of minutes. Eventually, I gathered at the courage and ran upstairs to the rest of my family. What was scary about it was that it couldn't have been my siblings playing a prank. It was a man's voice. I have all sisters. My dad wasn't around, and it didn't sound like him. I think about it a lot. Earned to this day. I have no idea who or what it was. Maybe it was my imagination or a really good prank, a ghost. I don't know. It still gives me goosebumps to this day. Story 3. So I live with my dog and my roommate in a one-story duplex. I've got a fenced-off yard, and the private part where my car is parked is accessible via an alleyway with a bunch of massive signs saying no parking, no trespassing, private property. I was sitting in my bedroom playing games, and it was around 12 to 1 a.m. and my dog, sitting on the couch in the living room, started barking at something outside. Every now and then she does this because there's a squirrel or a bush moved or something, so why get up to shush her? I open the blinds on the window to say, see, there's nothing outside, but there actually is something outside. So through the fence I can see the headlights of the car idling in front of my house, and lights start bobbing around outside, and what appears to be people walking around in front of my yard by my car with flashlights, looking around in the middle of the night. So full disclosure, I was kind of stoned. I'm not sure if it's a reverse effect because my sober self is an anxiety-ridden creature living under a blanket who's too scared to send an email to my manager, but my high self is Fret from Scooby-Doo, as in come on gang, let's solve the mystery. So I decide I'll just go out there and investigate. I let my dog out, walk my pajama-wearing unarmed brawl itself out there, and step outside and go to the gate. I can now see it's a well-dressed woman and man in a nice newer model car. They're walking around the front yard with flashlights, but I say, hey, this is private property, can you please leave? The woman kinda seems startled and says, sorry, our car broke down. The man gets in the car, she walks around, gets back in the car. They talk for a while, and I'm not sure what else to do. I just kinda stand there watching for what felt like ages, but was probably only a minute or two. Seemed to be deciding what to do. He starts the car back up, we pull out. Proceed to drive around, pulled into the public street, and parked behind my neighbor's car instead, but I decide to sit outside from my porch and kind of watch them to make sure they didn't get out and start investigating the neighbor's car. Instead, they never popped the hood of their car or got out, with seemed to run fine. When they drove off, I never saw them come back. For a couple of notes, there are loads of spots you can park in and around my neighborhood that would not be clearly private property with better lighting, and you don't need to be near other cars. But to get where my car is parked, you've got to drive down an alley and look for that spot. Like my friends have trouble finding it. The car was a newer model sports car. I'm not saying those cars can't ever break down, but I guess I'd be less suspect if they rolled up in a Geo Metro, Mini Cooper, an old Subaru hatchback or something, and we're like, oh man, my shitty car broke down. When I sobered up the next day, I was like, I either just politely told some car thieves to stop attempting a robbery on me, and they did, or I made someone's shitty night even shittier. I mean, they weren't dressed for car theft or like a party or date night. The woman was in heels, and I don't know, her about cars. Maybe they really did just break down in the spot next to my car was the closest they could find, and I spooked them even more by taking neighborhood watch a little too far, I guess, if I parked in the neighborhood. And a half-naked woman and her possibly big scary dog came outside to stare at me in the middle of the night. I'd get out of there too. I didn't report it, but I did inform the neighbors about what happened. My car was broken into a month or two later. I had some non-valuable stuff taken another night, but I slept through it and have no way of knowing if it was the same people or not. Story 4. Last night at around 5 a.m., I was asleep. I heard a lot of the dogs in the neighborhood, including mine, barking. I tried to ignore them because they do that sometimes. They block for anything and everything. A couple of seconds later, I think I hear what sounds like people yelling, at least 2 different people. I'm still half asleep, so at first I'm thinking it's a bunch of teenagers just being rowdy and annoying. I used to do stuff like that, but then I'm starting to understand what they're saying. It sounds more like arguing. I'm starting to wake up. I grab my phone and call the police. I'm on the phone with dispatch and hear what sounds like a woman screaming. Bloody murder. I've never heard anyone scream in such agony. Then I hear a man's voice saying, "Oh God. Oh God." Dispatch tells me that other people have called the police, so they're on there. Way, it sounds like people are right in my yard. Mom is awake at this point and comes to my room asking if I hear it too. We finally get the courage to look out the window. It's just one woman standing right under the street light near our yard and screaming at points. She's making her voice deeper and kind of sounds like the man, but just her. Her hair is tangled and she's only wearing shorts and a tank top in January. The police pull up 2 minutes later and then try patting her down, but every time they go to pat her down, she grabs her pockets. Eventually they just arrest her. I know she probably just wasn't all there or high, but it was scary. I've never seen someone acting like that, and I've never heard someone in such agony. I don't know what was wrong with her or what happened to her after that, but I keep thinking about it. Story 5. This happened to me and my mom a few months back in October. It happened in a very rural part of New Hampshire, like a side road, on a side road type of neighborhood. It was pouring out as it had been raining for pretty much the whole day. My mama just gotten back from down the street in my sister's car, and I was on the couch in the living room when suddenly I heard the doorbell ring. Our front door has a big glass pane in the front so we can look out from the inside and someone can look in from the outside. Through this pane window I see a man. I didn't get a great look at him as I didn't have my long-distance glasses on. The man noticed that I'd seen him and waved as if trying to be friendly. He was also wearing a poncho. I got up and thought about opening the door for Poncho Man, but relented. As I couldn't properly see who it was, I didn't want to let a stranger into the house. Instead, I went down the hall to my parents' bedroom where my mom was getting ready for work. She asked what was up, and I explained to her that a man in a poncho was outside our door. He wanted to talk to us. She went as white as a ghost immediately. She stopped getting ready, closed and locked the bedroom door, and started checking the window to make sure they were locked. I asked her what was going on. My mom explained that as she was driving home, she'd seen the Poncho Man. He'd been standing motionless on the side of the main street. As soon as my mom turned down our road, he started to walk, presumably to follow her. She said the encounter was weird, but thought nothing more of it. Why would someone be out in the pouring rain down a back road in the afternoon? It was like he was waiting for something. I started to panic as well. My mom called my aunt and asked what she should do. My aunt told her to call the police immediately, and so we did. We proceeded to pace around the bedroom, frantically looking out the windows to see if we could see Poncho Man. From where the bedroom was angled, it was impossible to look at the front porch and see if he was still there, but we were desperate for anything, and after what felt like hours, we finally saw a police car pull up. We carefully unlocked the door and went down to let the officer in. We explained what we saw, and he agreed to do a scan around the neighborhood. As he left, I noticed there was something on the doorknob, and I took it all, and it was a political act for a candidate that was running for office. It's possible Poncho Man was just campaigning for the candidate, but there are a lot of holes in that story. It was pouring out, so why would you go door to door? Why would you go that route in such a rural neighborhood? The houses are so far apart you'd barely make a dent on foot. The time doesn't make sense either. Sure, my mom and I were home, but it was about 4 in the afternoon. Most people would still be at work, so you'd probably get no response from knocking anyway. Eventually the officer returned. He'd found the guy down the road, and it questioned him. Poncho Man was able to ID himself and claimed that he was a political campaigner and was just knocking on doors for that reason. When probed further, conveniently enough, Poncho Man couldn't provide any other door signs, as the one he had left on our house was the last one. That makes the campaign story even more absurd. Our house is in the middle of the street. It's not like we were the last by any means. Why wouldn't you bring enough to the whole street? Even the officer pointed this out to us and said that it was unusual behavior. Although the officer was suspicious of him, there wasn't anything he could do about it, as there was no way to prove intent. He told us to be alert and do not hesitate to call if Poncho Man returns. Fast forward a few weeks, and I start noticing that a police car seems to be permanently stationed down the road from us. I got curious and asked my mom about it. She said that there were multiple break-ins into the house down the road. The police were doing some sort of a sting operation. The Poncho Man encounter and the break-ins may be unrelated, but considering how Poncho Man acted, I have a sinking feeling that they are Connected. Thankfully for the past few months we've heard and seen nothing of Poncho Man. We got a new doorbell system with a camera and the police left the area where they were doing the sting. I hope that this whole situation is over and done with and that I never have to meet Poncho Man. Story 6. Let's start this out by saying I've seen things I do all the time. It's not uncommon and most of the time I shrug it off. I have generalized anxiety disorder. I feel emotions a lot heavier than other people do who don't have it. It can mean I cry for no reason, I get angry at nothing, and even laugh at a speck of dust. I overthink every detail throughout my day many times. However, one big thing that goes along with this is that my mind never shuts off. I hear voices that aren't there and so on, and I see figures who my brain pretends exists, so that's why I often, as I said before, shrug it off. However, this time was different, very different. It was a few weeks ago. I was home alone. My parents would work, and I didn't have work, so I just crashed there after school. This isn't uncommon, I do it often. I'm a female and 18. So I do what any smart gal would do and knock all the doors because people are crazy. I got a call from my parents saying that they were going to be at a bar for a while. Fine by me. It meant I could read a book and enjoy the peace and quiet for longer. It was around 7 and it was dark outside. The moon gave the yard some light. I read my book for an hour and now it being 8:25 I heard a sound from the kitchen. My head snapped over thinking my parents had gotten home. I didn't hear either of them, but again I was lost in my book. Hello Noah. Okay, odd, it must be my brain playing tricks. I do have a strange mind, but no, there it was again. It was a drawn-out noise. I couldn't make it out. It gave me goosebumps, but again my mind plays tricks. I should just go check it out to calm my nerves. I walked into the kitchen and stopped dead in my tracks. 2 of the drawers were open. They shouldn't be. I haven't eaten yet, so I have not even walked into the kitchen. Why were the spoons and forks and knives open? Mom, are you here? It was fear. I was getting scared and I felt a panic attack coming. It just wasn't right. I like things being perfect. It helps calm me down, so when it isn't I get iffy. I took deep breaths and closed the drawers. Could it have been me forgetting things, but would being loose and causing them to slide out when I heard a knock at the door? Okay, good parents are home. They'll understand. They always do. I go back to the living room and go to unlock the door, but it was already unlocked. I let my hand just hover there. I locked the door. I knew I locked that door. I checked 3 times, peeked it 5 times just to make sure it was locked. Really hard to knock again. It shook me out of my slight panic. Sorry, I called to them. How you opened the door? No one. There was no one out there. I looked around outside. There was no car either. I quickly closed and locked the door again, taking a step back. Okay, this isn't my strange mind. That door was locked. I knew I heard a knock. Panic. I was having a panic attack. It didn't take much to make me have one. I ran into my room and closed my door. I stayed there until my parents got home. I slept on their floor that night. Nothing else happened since I opened the door, but again I haven't stayed home alone. I took more shifts at work and refused to be there without someone. I said my generalized anxiety disorder. I was in my mind. Was it something else? Does anyone else have a similar experience? Story 7. It's perhaps best if I provide some background in context because it may help strengthen my story and people will hopefully believe me. I know that a lot of people claim to have a true story about strange encounters in the woods, and I don't want people to accuse me of making this up because honestly I swear that this really did happen. It's not supernatural. It took place during the daytime and the monster is very much human. When I was about 13 or 14 years old in 2003 to 2004, I went on a camping trip with my mother and stepfather, and my 4 younger siblings were not a very well-off family. In fact, we were quite poor. I never went on holidays abroad, and we would always go camping, usually to the same campsite which felt like miles away but was in reality less than 10 miles from the city where we lived. We'd been there a few times previously. I knew the campsite in the surrounding area fairly well. It felt pretty safe and familiar. On this occasion, everything was going pretty normal. I hated camping. My parents would always argue when it came to putting up our tent. It was pretty boring being in the woods, and I would normally be the one entertaining my siblings. I hated not having electricity access to proper toilets and showers, all that stuff. It could be quite fun looking back, and I do treasure the memories I have with my stepdad, who is no longer with us. Usually we would go on long hikes or bike rides with my stepdad, using maps to charter our way to a small village, promising to get us all ice cream. On this camping trip, we were going on a 10-mile bike ride. Both my parents had their own bikes. Along with my sister and I, my stepdad Spike had a small trailer. Where my 3 younger siblings were sacked, it was hard work going on these epic long bike rides, but I rather enjoy. Being in the middle of the woods, surrounded by nature, we weren't in the middle of nowhere, but it was remote enough for it to be inaccessible to public transportation. Only forced ranger-type vehicles could access the roads during all times we went camping. We never saw another vehicle go down these roads on this day. We're all cycling down this road when suddenly we hear the sounds of a vehicle coming up slowly behind us. My stepdad is in front of us when he stalks and tells us to move aside to let the vehicle come past. There is a sense of urgency and confusion in his tone, as he's unsure why there's a vehicle. Even here the vehicle passes, and we were expecting to see a 4-stranger vehicle, but instead we see a station wagon type car with a long body and a large trunk with a window at the back. In the back of the station wagon, I see several large trash bags. It's a very strange sight. I may only be a teenager, but this is a sight that set off alarm bells for several reasons. 1, this is not a car that's designed for going off-road in the woods. 2, as previously mentioned, we've never encountered any vehicles down this bike road before. 3, the person driving is clearly not lost, as they didn't start to ask for directions. 4, there are big black trash bags in the back of the car that look very suspicious. What I mean by this point, they are full and tied up very tightly. We could all see into the back of the car, and I didn't see anything poking out of the back to indicate it was full of garbage. And number 5, the driver looked very rough, and I don't mean to sound rude, he looked very mean. I can't recall his features, just that he didn't look like a very friendly person that belonged in the countryside. He wore dark clothing, and I think he was clean shaver and had very short hair. I wish I remembered more about what this man looked like. As if this incident couldn't get any stranger, what took place next has left such an impression on me that I still recall the sense of fear that I felt at the time. Recalling this, my palms are getting very sweaty and my heart is racing. The car drives on several more feet. The driver then stops for what feels like the longest time in my entire life. Nothing happens. We're all just watching this car. My stepdad told us to remain still. He's very serious as he's assessing the situation. Then the car reverse lights come on and the car starts reversing up to us. My stepdad goes into full panic mode. He tells us to run. We don't even get on our bicycles to ride. Instead, we all flee on foot, running with our bicycles through the woods until we find a railway bridge which we'd previously passed over. We never looked back. I have no idea if the man in the car got out to come after us. I don't know if he just continued driving. I have no idea who he was or what was in those bags. We never really spoke about what happened that day. I know that it was something that seriously scared my stepdad because of his response, and it's left me frightened about who I might encounter in the woods until this very day. Story 8. A little backstory. First, we had this neighbor called B. The back of his house faced the side of our house. When I was growing up, I was really good friends with his son, so I was often at their house. B was a little weird, but his wife was wonderful and his son was my best friend. So I never paid much attention to his weirdness. We lived in a small town where no one locked their doors or worried about anything. Over the winter, we'd started noticing footprints in the snow every now and then leading from our back door and windows to B's house. We didn't really worry too much about it, as it was obvious he never actually entered the house. We assumed he was probably trying to get a look at my mom, who is pretty attractive. So come summertime, my dad installed a tall privacy fence on the side of the house that faced his, so we couldn't see into our backyard where my mom's son bathed all the time, and Dad also installed multiple motion sensor lights. One summer day, B was wearing this absolutely awful looking like baby blue tracksuit that had shiny silver trim. I remember it clearly because my sister and I made so many jokes about it that day. That night, I'd asked my parents if I could sleep downstairs. It was probably 9 at the time. All the bedrooms were upstairs, but I liked sleeping downstairs so I could stay up late and watch TV. I don't remember how late it was, but I was sitting there coloring when I thought I saw someone through the blinds at the back door. I brushed it off and kept coloring, or out of the corner of my eye, not that horrific baby blue and silver jumpsuit standing at our back door. I was too terrified to move, but I didn't want him to know that I saw him because The back door was unlocked. I thought that he might try to enter if he knew I had seen him. I had colored multiple pictures before he finally left. This happened more than once. I come downstairs and see him looking in the back door. He started getting bolder. And he would be looking in the door in the middle of the day. He was just creepy, but I was always too scared to tell my parents. Looking back, I have no idea why I was scared to tell them. Maybe because his son was my best friend, and I didn't want to lose that. About a month later, B was being investigated by CPS. His son was eventually taken away and sent to live with his biological mother in a different state. Not too long after that, B ended his life. I know this isn't the creepiest story, but as a 9-year-old little girl, and it terrified me. Story 9. My practical and charged self continually denied what was happening. My base instincts knew that we were praying from the moment this guy saw us. In spite of this, I'm not sure that I would have taken action if I didn't feel that my children were in jeopardy. It's pretty sad to say that I wouldn't bother an employee for just me. My husband is an executive and frequently travels out of the country. As much as I avoided going shopping at night, it was a necessity at times. Sometimes you find out you need a poster board and glitter for a project due the next day. It happens we have 2 boys who were ages 6 and 10. At the time it was the dead of winter in the Midwest, so it was pitch black out. By 6 p.m. I went to one of the big stores that is frequently associated with strange people and deviant behavior. Mom of the year. I pulled into the parking lot and was delighted to find the first spot next to handicapped open. I felt seriously lucky until I pulled into that spot. I immediately noticed that there was a van to my left, which was backed into the space. In my head, I heard the voice of my mom saying, "Never park next to a van, as someone can open the big sliding door, grab you, and be gone in moments." Although I dismissed this as nonsense, I still took note that there was a middle-aged man sitting in the driver's seat. They concerned me enough to tell the kids not to dilly-dally when they got out of the car. I didn't want to be standing there with the door open while they looked for their shoes and toys and whatnot. I got out, and the man was less than a foot from my youngest son, and as I was getting him out of his booster seat, I could feel the man staring at us, and when I looked up to smile at him, he was looking right through us. It just fell off. We got into the store without a problem. I grabbed a card and stuck the youngest in it. My older boy was a few paces ahead and said, "Mom, I'm getting some Axe body wash," and peels off to go down the aisle. Before I can stop him, I see that the guy from the van is now in front of us and is turned back and is walking towards my son. I have no idea how this happened, as I looked back several times in the parking lot and I didn't see him get out of his van. The man then notices that I'm right behind my son, turns and continues to walk ahead. I'm convinced at this point, but not scared. I continue shopping and eventually notice this guy is in every aisle as us. He's covertly looking at us. Seems to be fake shopping. He has nothing in his hands and does not have a card. In retrospect, it took time to put all these facts together. It was if I knew before my brain did. I decided to leave the grocery aisle to test if he would continue to follow us. In the more obscure parts of the store magazine aisles, he's looking at a book. I'm looking at the laundry baskets, and suddenly he's there examining hangers. You get the point. I headed to the checkout and was convinced that I could no longer see him. And I looked for him too. There was no way that I could safely return to the car at this point. I asked 2 male employees if they could walk us to the car. One said, "Sure, what's going on?" I explained to the man had been following us and that I knew he was parked next to us. He then said, "Is he bald and wearing a leather jacket?" When I said that he was, the man responded that another lady had just left with her kids and said that he was following her around. Now I knew that I wasn't being hysterical and I started sobbing. They walked us to the car and the van was still out there. The employee walked to the back of the van and I thought, make note of his license plate. I called a friend who worked the local police department, and its luck would have it she was across the street at the sporting event with her daughter. She marched into the store, found the 2 employees, and asked them to show her the van. It was gone. The employee had not written down the license plate because the guy in question walked out with a woman, as if there aren't plenty of women who do unspeakable things themselves or help their men to do so. The police took a report and reviewed the store surveillance tape. The guy was indeed following us and the other woman around the store. They were not able to find him without the license plate. I trust my instincts implicitly now. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that one. I'd like to thank my channel members and patrons for the support: Sigma Cube, Emma, Lisa, Cinderella Baby Erica Nicole Snowball Athena Melanie The Honeybee 987. Pretty Girl 215 Ryan Janice Borderline. Betty Brooke Wendy ADHD Aurora Crafty. Cow Tina Tina Vampy Dabs Patricia Amber. Krista Brenda Absent Alice Christy K. Spider's Web Ooh La La Andrea Lady Dracard Sumonique Sean Gorman. Stacy Greg Chelsea Amanda J. Samantha Zepp Tappy Sarah C. Linda Austin Tegan. Erin Lil Smart Jenny Gabrielle. Misanthropia Fire of Fries Jody Sarah P. James Gargano Gemma Allen Monica Level Ace and Alex. I will see you on the next one.